Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you had a good spring break. Um, Sitting at a different location than usual. We have a new dog now, so I have to be mindful. Actually, my last dog passed in December, so we have a new dog now. His name is Bruiser. Actually, want to take a look? There you go. There's Bruiser. Say hi, Bruiser. Anyway, all right. So as I usually do, I record this a little bit earlier than Monday. So, but this will be posted on Monday. So on Monday, your Megalomania assignment is due. I hope everybody's all caught up on that. I did not hear from everybody. Was saying that it was a gift that was given everybody. You just gotta, I mean, you still have time. You can actually like write to me if you don't know what the lead is. You should have known what the lead is by now, because by now you should have written the billboard and gotten the information you needed. Okay, so I'm hoping I'm not going to see a bunch of assignments that just basically repeat what the release says. You know, I want to make sure that that this is now the reporting phase of this semester, and that we now have to bear down and actually um um that we now actually have to really like get an understanding of what it means to dig for as much information as possible. Down the bottom, much like finding out that the Easter Bunny was a motivation for an attempted murder. The Easter Bunny eating an Easter Bunny chocolate. Okay. um so the rewrite will be posted too once I post this for the Megalomania assignment. And let me actually just stare at the screen right now. What you're going to see is actually, like I said, this is before I'm actually posting the stuff. So what I'm going to show you right now, yeah, I'm a Met fan. I'm reading um, about Edwin Diaz's injury. He's a main reliever on the team. Um, okay, so what we have here, actually, I'm sorry, I never do this first. I'm going to talk about the next assignment, which is actually going to be also posted today, Monday. Okay. All right. You have an opportunity to actually talk to Bill Borden again if you didn't get it the first time. You know, I have graded some already, and some of them actually look pretty good. And I'm really just waiting for this to actually to actually pop up, and I can but just written for business people, because those types of stories are written all the time. Company people, changes at the company, restructuring, all that stuff happens all the time. But what this story does actually is it goes a step further and basically shows that something bad happened here that maybe everybody would be interested in, just beyond the business community. Okay. So this will be posted. It says here March 27th, rewrite. Don't worry about this just yet. This is the teacher's view. This is something I'm going to post next week. We're going to talk about the final assignment next week, actually. Actually, there's going to be another assignment after the one. There's going to be one assignment I'm going to post today, another assignment after that, and then the major assignment. So you have 3 assignments after the Megalomania left. Okay. So anyway, this is the press release, and like I said, that'll be posted. All right. All right. And again, you still have an opportunity to let me know what you think the lead is, but like I said, you really should have by now, figured out what that lead is, because you should have written Bill Borden right now and obtain information that will basically help boost your story and make it a bigger story than it originally appeared to be. Okay. All right. So what we have here is the data journalism assignment. So we entered the data journalism phase of this course. And excuse me, sorry. And this is also reporting. This is probably one of the most difficult assignments of the semester, because it really, what it does is it's actually required by the department that this course teach this, because it is something that basically has become a big thing over the last 20, 25 years in digital journalism. And that is The whole idea of reporting on trends and lists. Okay, they even call them listicles. And what I do is and they've inspired stories that get a lot of clicks, let's put it that way. And probably the first ones to really do this sort of thing, we're not journalists necessarily, but Yelp. Yelp prints lists of things, and people get very interested because they want to know if they go to a community, like what's the best place to eat, for instance. That's data actually, because when we talk about data in journalism, we're talking about numbers. Numbers are very important. We've talked about that before. We talked about that. That's why that's another reason why I gave out that worksheet assignment, because things like tax increases, tuition increases, murder rate increases, things like that. That's data, and they can tell a story by itself. Numbers can tell a story because they're probably the most identifiable theme of any story is a number, a percentage increase, a tax increase, the amount of money you have to spend on something, the amount of more, how much more you have to spend on something. These are the things that are, these are the kitchen table issues that matter to people more than anything. Okay. The weather. Okay. People care about like how many inches of snow are going to fall. They care about like what the dates on the calendar for like when school's going to be closed or whatever. So, right here we have essentially I just put in the top restaurants in New Brunswick, home of Rutgers University. Fritz's Restaurant, some of these others don't even know. Salt Seafood and Oyster Bar, number 2. Clyde's, number 3. Here's one that I remember, The Frog and the Peach, number 4. These are some of the most well-read things on the internet, as well as the weather. Luca's Restaurante, Sophie's Bistro, Fat Cactus, Tavern on George, Squina Latina Restaurant, Steakhouse 85, the top 10. So these are very well read stories, and people want to know. You ever seen the movie High Fidelity? That was basically a movie about a guy who's obsessed with top 5 and top 10 lists. Okay. These are things that help guide people through their lives. Okay. And what I'm going to be asking you to do in this story is essentially it's a data story, it's a number story, it's a top 5 story. And that is to basically and it's also a number story in terms of tuition, and is to report on a trend. Your lead is going to be on a trend. It's not going to be, okay, I know I always say that actually, like, reporting the newest, biggest thing is the most important thing in the story and the most important thing to put at the top of your story, okay? But so people get confused in this assignment, because what I'm asking you guys to do is to write on Rutgers tuition. And I'm asking you to write a story that writes about the trend of tuition over the last 5 years. Okay. Basically, I want you to write about what the tuition the tuition increase, if there was an increase for the last 5 years was, and if there was a trend, were there tuition increases 1 out of the last 5 years, 2 out of the last 5 years, 3 out of the last 5 years, 4 out of the last 5 years, 5 out of the last 5 years. That's the story's lead. Why is that new? Because that's the last 5 years. It's the newest 5 years. There's my dog. Hold on 1 second. We have a bunny too, and she actually, like, we're trying to train the dog and the bunny together. It's not going great, but we have a fencer on the bunny right now, and she gets like annoyed when we don't share it with her. We don't share the bunny with her. Don't think she's going to eat the bunny, but we'll see. Anyway, so that's the newest trend is the last 5 years. We're going 5 years. Why? It's arbitrary. Okay. I mean, I could pick the last 10, but whatever. People want to know why do they want to know this new, what is the latest trend, newest trend of Rutgers tuition increases, as opposed to maybe what, what the tuition, just if we're not just writing a story on the tuition increase last year. We're writing see if there's a trend over the last 5 years, because if there's a trend, that's likely to tell you that this trend is going to continue. People want to know if they're actually shopping for schools, not only like how much the tuition rate is, but they want to know, is this tuition rate going to keep growing over the next few years? And should I send my son or daughter or whoever there? Okay. So that's why these trend stories are important. And you're going to write a lead that has the trend. Okay. And to be honest with you, I had it right here. Your lead, I'm gonna actually give a lot away here, okay? Should basically start with Rutgers. because the university has passed, I'm not gonna tell you, that's what you gotta find out, actually, passed as or approved. Hikes, oh, jeez, I am having a hard time with my computer today. Tuition hikes over the last 5 years, okay, and that's going back, by the way, to 2018-2019 school year, okay? So you'll be doing 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020, 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 22, and 22 to 23. So that includes the current year, okay? And then, of course, it's according to, it could be, now this is gonna be a question, it could be, I'm gonna suggest that you get this information from the university, and I'm gonna show you how to do that, okay? According to, you say according to the university, because they're the ones that have actually reported the information. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna find out how many times you've actually raised tuition in the last 5 years. And that could be essentially your lead right there. Rutgers has done this over the last 5 years, passed, like, approved, whatever. People get confused. I see people do an average of the tuition hikes over the last 5 years. No. I see people do just the last year of the last time they passed tuition hikes. No. You're gonna report how many times? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 0 times over the last 5 years. That's your lead, okay? And then what you're gonna do is you're going to basically get into the who, what, where, why. Now, this is not a story that necessarily has anecdotes to it, okay? Or that are prominent, okay? Not like the last story we did. This is more about transitions, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna actually get into the who, what, where, why, when in this story. And in Rutgers actually provides reasons for why they do this. And usually it's because the reason generally is costs go up. I mean, that's an oversimplification. Okay, but your next paragraph should get into the why they've passed tuition over the last 5 years, and you can get that information directly from them. You just use the releases that they actually, you can get these from the releases they actually release themselves, the press releases released on their website, and I'll show you how to do that. And they come up with the same reasons like every year for why they do it. And what you can do is you just say a general reason for why they do it. Rutgers says they passed these hikes because, and maybe go into some elaboration there, okay? What did they pass? I mean, what did they pass? I mean, this is where maybe some listing comes in. You can basically put maybe a list on the bottom. Perhaps it just basically says 2018 to 2019. And just list it like this. 2019, 2020, and then just go on. Or you can do it as a middle story. Here were the hikes. You could say how much that comes out in dollar figures, because sometimes they say that too. How much is that in dollars? Who, what, where, why, when? How much is tuition now? Maybe this is where you get close to, how much is tuition now compared to 2018? You go into to break into some details that back up the lead. Okay, basically a story about how much more people are paying and what the trend has been and why, and that sort of thing, and when they actually pass these tuition hikes. You could probably do this in one paragraph. You don't necessarily have to put together a list. Okay. All right, and then what I want to ask you to do is actually to get 2 or 3 people, and I'm going to put up a discussion point too that'll be posted. That basically says, this is where you get some anecdotes. Okay, interview people or get from this discussion point opinions from students. And I like everybody to contribute to this. Again, this is class participation, okay, who can comment on this and provide an anecdote, perhaps. Basically, I have to work. An anecdote would be a good personal anecdote would be like, I have to work an extra job just to afford tuition here. I mean, it's actually a big deal here. I mean, it's actually like one of the big reasons why my oldest son didn't go here is because actually he was only paying a little bit more to go to William and Mary in Virginia, and he wanted to leave. He didn't want to just like stay in the same area. So like a lot of people, right? And so that's actually a good personal anecdote. So that's basically where the anecdotes come in. So this is a story as a series of transitions first that identify things, the who, what, where, why, when's, that back up the lead, why this trend is continuing, why it's going on, when did they do it, that sort of thing. And then get into some two or three people to add to the story and get some personal opinions on how these tuition hikes have impacted them. So okay, so let's go through the actual assignment again. Typically in data journals, the story is very similar to the stories we've already done, where the main theme, as identified in the lead, identifies a trend. Okay, the ensuing paragraphs provide context, explanation, reaction, much like the stories we've already done. And what I did was I actually have examples of stories I did, like Patch. In New Jersey school districts with the most drug alcohol cases, new data 2021, this from a couple of years ago, obviously. And then there's a lead that identifies the trend. A number of New Jersey school districts has sizable increases in substance abuse cases past year as school districts, and this is only 1 year, of course, not 5 years, and alcohol, but it's big compared to the previous year. And alcohol continued to be a pervasive problem, okay? And then, of course, vaping, they added that in, so that may have drove up the numbers because consider that alcohol substance abuse, but whatever. Okay, and then we actually put it together in the form of a list of like all the different schools and their drug and alcohol abuse rate. Okay, and basically we have some explanation here. Okay, so basically have some explanation for what this list means. Okay, with the highest increases, I mean, that's another good thing you can do. You can actually also, another good thing I would suggest you do within the story itself is maybe like, when we say like how much is student, how much is the tuition, we could like highlight particular years where it was the highest rate, and then like give an explanation why. Yeah, provide some additional context. And then maybe that year when it was the lowest increase, okay, an explanation. And that's a big one, by the way. You're going to find something about that this really has to be in here. And maybe you already know what I'm talking about, okay? But that was significant. The lowest increase, if you want to call it an increase, okay? Giving away a bit of a hint there. And the reason for it, okay? And they basically talk here about, basically why this is like something that's they monitor and they actually like put together as a data list. Basically we again highlight certain schools that actually had like bigger increases than others. Were a little bit surprising, like Mahwah and Red Bank, okay, which are not known for schools that typically have all these drug and alcohol cases, but who knows? Shouldn't just say that, right? All right. We had another one too. And if you could please just hold on for 1 second. Somebody's trying to. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. Every New Jersey school graded in 2020. This actually provided a little more context because this is actually a controversial rating that actually like grades each school based on what was the PARCC test. You might remember the PARCC test, I don't know. And they basically like say like there's schools that are failing, and basically you have the PTA president. This is the reaction I was talking about. This is actually why reaction is good, because it provides additional context, get the student's reaction to what's going on. PTA saying that this gives students, the people, the parents, students more information than before. Usually school boards associations on the opposite side, because it basically draws an incomplete picture of school performance. They feel like they're being labeled, by getting a number, a data symbol. Okay. Patch wasn't the only place that does these kinds of things, and neither is Yelp. And there goes my NJ.com. We actually were inspired by NJ.com because they were the ones that really were doing it first. These towns have the lowest property tax in each of New Jersey's 21 counties. Is that a news story? Yes, because it's something that people are currently paying. And it's active, and maybe it's presented in a new context. So that's what's new and big here is presented in a new context, not just the latest property tax increase, but it basically shows some sort of comparison. It shows you essentially again a trend. How do you rate against others? Okay. All right, so let's go back to the actual assignment, and I actually provide links to those things here. Okay. This is also a bit of an investigative thing, the project that we're doing here. I don't say project, it's a story. Okay, it's 500, 800 words. Okay, and so it requires a little bit of that working to investigate and dig a little bit. Okay, you can see that this identifies a trend, provides a little detail on the trend, who is at the top of the list, how the list is developed. You want to maybe explain a little bit about that, and then of course maybe there's a list itself, no fancy grifts, but maybe just a list, or maybe you could just keep it in paragraph form. There's basically a list of different years and different, rate increases for each of those years. Okay. And then basically I identify basically showing the Jersey school districts with 50 substance abuse cases, how they arrived at that. The transition, what does the list mean? Why is there a trend? Who is at the top of the list, basically highlighting those years where maybe it was a bit extraordinary compared to others. Again, there's other places that have it, Letterboxd, imdb.com that have these. I also provide a video that might be helpful to present that context. I did an interview a year or so back with Dave Willis, a reporter from the Azure Park Press, who basically talked about like what the importance of developing these lists and these trends and other things that he does, because he's very data driven in a lot of the reporting that he does. He's a columnist who reports about consumer affairs and why people should be alerted to certain things that are happening in consumer affairs and consumer data, consumer things that are getting screwed, things that they purchase and buy and might be screwed up and that sort of thing. Okay, so how do you find this information? All right, so I think the easiest way to do it is really just to go through Google. Now, I say that actually you can go through Google and find a respectable news source. So you don't necessarily have to use the Rutgers news releases. You could use respectable sources like NJ.com. That's respectable. Patch, yes, believe it or not, is respectable. As APP.com, as an established newspaper. And please, if you have a question about that, run that by me. I've seen people claim I'm shortcutting, go through these aggregation websites that are kind of cheesy, and I don't think they always get them right. Like College Tuition Compare. Please don't use that. Use a newspaper or the Rutgers news releases themselves. And to me, the easiest way to do it is to use the Rutgers news service itself. Okay. And how do you do that? Well, you can just go, like I said, to Google itself. And if it'll work for me here. And you know what? Probably the easiest thing to do is just think of what they do in data journalism and think of keywords. Okay. What's the first thing you might think of when you want to look for like a tuition increase from a certain year? Well, you might just do something like this. Rutgers tuition hike. And the first year we look at is actually 2018, 2019. So maybe you do 2019 or 2018 when they actually passed the rate increase. So you put that in a Google search. I'm doing this in Chrome, so you can actually do the search actually in the message bar. And what you're going to come up with, boy, this was going a lot faster than it was before. It is now, is you'll actually come up with, hey, look at that, a Rutgers. I'm giving something away here. That's your first year, the 2018, 2019 year. You call up the news release, and the news release, it may be bullshit. I just want to worry about the tuition rate. That's the bottom line of what people have to pay and what they do in that time. And you can actually use these quotes if it's in actual Rutgers news release, because it's actually direct quote, and you can attribute it to them. If you get this information now from NJ.com, that's a different publication, and that's a wholly independent publication and so you actually have to attribute that. If you have to see a quote information, any information has to be quoted to that source itself, which would be NJ.com. Okay. I hope you got that. Okay. But we must balance that with the need to provide access to the highest quality education for our students. So they're basically saying, this is kind of the general reason, is they're saying that they raise tuition every year because they have to provide the highest quality education for our students. Okay. And they call it a moderate increase. Okay. And then they go and they make some comparisons here. They've tried to keep things at an absolute minimum. Here's some of the information. You can take this right from the press release, okay? And I've gone through every 5 years and do it on a Google search, and I found the news release for every 5 years. But like I said, you can also use NJ.com or APP.com or a respectable news source like that. Actually, if I do, let's see if it's going really slow. Okay, NJ.com, let's see what comes up. Okay, so actually it didn't come up right away. Oh, there it goes. So if you get information from here, I want you, it says right there, it says, you know, there's the actually provide numbers like how much they're going to pay. Remember I said you can highlight that too. This would be according to NJ.com, okay, because that would be plagiarism if you just see that's the difference. The Rutgers news releases, there's a big difference. They come out with a news release. A news release becomes public domain, okay? That's how the courts have ruled it. You could take, that's basically essentially, remember I've talked before about press releases and you can quote right off of them like you did with Megalomania. That becomes a public domain. It comes out in the public. It's meant to be released and quoted directly from. But if you use actually a news organization that prints information that's not a news release, that's their incorporated information. That's their intellectual property, okay? You can't just take their information and not credit them. You have to actually credit them, okay? Otherwise, it's plagiarism, okay? So you have to say according to NJ.com or something, which by the way, you could also say that according to the Star Ledger, because that's actually that's actually the newspaper, okay? All right. Like I said, please address why these tuition decisions were made, identify where the information came from. Rutgers released the information through its news releases or whatever, you know. You can mention that in the story. Once you identify the trend in the lead and basically provide the explanations for why they did it, maybe highlight certain years where it was highest and not, get 2 or 3 students for reaction and put that at the bottom because it's not the most important thing in the story. Okay, it's not a reaction story. It's not a reaction story. I've had people do that in the past where they think this is something a reaction story and they put that at the top of the story. The most important thing in this story is the trend and why the trend happened and when the trend happened and highlight certain years for when the trend happened, that sort of thing. And then the least important thing, but still important, is the student's reaction to it, okay? Why is that less important? Because the story is about the trend. It's not about the student's reaction. So you put that at the bottom of the story, okay? And then I give you the years that we have to be identified, okay? And I'm giving you 2 weeks to do this assignment. It's due April 3rd, okay? So please make sure that you get that done. And of course, there'll be a rewrite option on this, okay? I actually did give you a chapter that is somewhat connected to like what we're doing here. It's investigative reporting. I mean, you're not really doing investigative reporting here, but it'll help provide context for, we don't really actually have a lot of chapters to read. I actually have 2 additional chapters when we do our feature assignment in a few weeks. But you know, there's actually a couple of chapters that help you out for that one. And that's all, and then we're done with the reading. How about that? But you know, basically, this is a story where you have to dig, and that's investigative reporting. News reporting can be reactive or proactive. For example, if something happens, a natural disaster, a plane crash, political upheaval or war, news organizations react to providing coverage. Okay. So you basically, like, when things happen, you react to it, but you also try to provide some sort of a context. Like, so when how many times there was like a bridge closure, like if there's a crash, it happens at a certain intersection, maybe there's something about that intersection where the crashes happen routinely, and you want to report on maybe the trend. Maybe there's something about that. Maybe there's a missing sign or something like that. So that's where maybe the trend helps maybe dig out things that maybe otherwise wouldn't be there. Okay. Whom and what to investigate. Well, I mean, they talk about that. I mean, like obviously, like news organizations, one of the first places you want to go after probably is government, being a government watchdog, something I talk a lot about in my media ethics class. Because and Rutgers is actually a state institution, so they're controlled by the governor. The governor, I believe, actually signs off essentially on the tuition increase as well in a kind of indirect way. Okay. You want to ideally, when if we were doing like a real, like, you know, big story here on the whole thing, we'd want to like find out maybe like, like maybe what's behind that. We don't have to do that for the story, but like maybe there's other reasons why they're raising tuition. Maybe they're not managing their money right or something, right? Um, the observation it says right there, that's the reason for having the students in the story, because it actually again provides context, and they can react to the trends, observe it, and see that maybe like this isn't a good thing that they're doing. They're really driving me away from this place. Okay. Planning the story, you obviously want to have like an idea in mind ahead. Public records. This is public record. Rutgers tuition increases. A private college might not be like public record, but a public college is, because it's actually something that comes from tax dollars. So that's another reason why we're doing this, because we want to let people know like what's the trend of how their money is being spent. Again, if we were to dig a little bit story into the more of this, like sometimes why is Rutgers tuition like, like as high as it is, when it used to be like really cheap, and that's why people went there. But now it's actually like, I mean, Virginia State University is only a little bit higher than the actual State University of New Jersey, the state you actually live in. I mean, that I don't get. Technology, obviously, there's different places to actually get, data information, statistics and getting statistics. And of course, the press release is like one way of getting that. But there's actually places where they have, the New Jersey Department of Education. I hope this doesn't turn into another pinwheel. Actually, like prints a lot of those lists I just showed you before with like, Jersey Department of Education. They actually have on their website itself. They've actually moved things around since the last time I checked, but they actually provide essentially Microsoft Excel spreadsheets that show a lot of the data I was showing you before about like substance abuse and SAT scores and things like that you can develop into a trend. You can like basically show people and compare, like who has like the higher tuition SAT rates compared to other school districts, that sort of thing. So about the DOE, it's probably under there. And other stuff they have here. Okay, you basically have to kind of click through and see what's here, A to Z. You can do a search and find that data. Okay. All right. So that's what we got. That's what your new assignment is. It's due in 2 weeks. Just give me 1 second. And I hope you can hear me, because I hit stop share and I have a frozen screen. There we go. All right. I hope you can hear me, because I have a frozen screen. Okay. Anyway, so that's the assignment is due in 2 weeks. Please let me know if you have any questions. I would watch that video from Dave Willis to help provide some additional context. It's a story about a trend. Remember that, a story about a trend. Okay, and I really strongly suggest that you use your main sources as Rutgers news releases. It's a simple Google search. You just call up those releases, and there's your information and the explanation for why they do it, and then the explanation for maybe why certain years were higher than others, and maybe why certain year was lower than others, or years. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks very much, and I will be talking to you.